The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating chairs, all talking at once. Their translator devices worked overtime, turning alien clicks, whistles, and growls into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Veltar of the Serenari watched it all with his large, gentle eyes. His blue skin seemed to glow softly in the chamber's light. Unlike the other delegates who waved their arms or tentacles in anger, Veltar sat perfectly still. His people were known across the galaxy for being calm. They never fought wars. They never raised their voices. They solved problems by talking and understanding. The humans are too dangerous, shouted the Korthic representative, his 6 arms flailing. They have been in space for only 50 years, and already they cause trouble everywhere they go. I agree, hissed the snake-like Visari delegate. Their ships carry weapons that could destroy planets. What kind of species build such things? Veltar. Listen to the complaints pile up. The humans were too aggressive. They solved problems with violence. They couldn't be trusted. Some delegates wanted to kick humanity out of the Galactic Council before things got worse. They are primitives, declared the crystal being from Zerion. Their planet is full of wars and conflict. They bring that chaos with them to space. High Counselor Thexon, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council thousands of years ago, raised a glowing hand for silence. We have heard these concerns before. The question remains, what do we do about the human problem? Veltar had heard enough. He stood slowly, his movement so smooth it seemed like he was floating. The hall grew quiet. When a Serenari spoke, everyone listened. His people had solved more conflicts than any other species in the galaxy. Honored Counselor, Veltar said, his voice soft but clear. I request permission to speak. Of course, Ambassador Veltar. Your wisdom is always welcome here. Veltar's large eyes looked around the chamber. My fellow beings speak of humans as if they are monsters. But I wonder, do we truly understand them? We judge them by their actions. But do we know why they act as they do? The Korthic delegate made a rude noise. What is there to understand? They fight wars for sport. They make entertainment from violence. Perhaps, Veltar replied calmly. But the Serenari have learned that every action has a reason. Even the most violent behavior often comes from fear or love or a desire to protect. We cannot help humans become better until we understand what drives them. High Counselor Thexan leaned forward. What do you propose, Ambassador? I propose that my people study the humans directly, not from space, but living among them, learning their ways, understanding their hearts. The chamber exploded in shocked voices. The Visari delegate nearly fell from his chair. Live with them? That's suicide. They'll corrupt you with their violence. Or worse, added the crystal being, they'll teach you their barbaric ways. Veltar waited for the noise to die down. My people have lived for peace for over 3,000 years. We have never fought a war. We have never harmed another being. Do you really think 3 months with humans could change what we are? Several delegates nodded. The Serenari were famous for their peaceful nature. If anyone could spend time with humans and remain unchanged, it would be them. Besides, Veltar continued, if we are to help humans find peace, we must first understand why. They choose conflict. Knowledge is the first step to wisdom. High Counselor Thexan was quiet for a long moment. How many of your people would go on this mission? A small team. Myself, 2 scientists, and a cultural expert. We would live among them for exactly 3 months. We would observe, learn, and report back to the Council. And if the humans refuse to let you stay with them? Veltar smiled, expression that made his blue face seem to glow brighter. From what I have learned about humans, they are actually quite welcoming to visitors. Their concept of hospitality is well documented. I believe they will agree to our study." The debate went on for hours. Some delegates thought the plan was too dangerous. Others said it was a waste of time. But in the end, they agreed to let Veltar try. The Serenari had solved impossible problems before. Maybe they could solve the human problem too. 3 weeks later, Veltar stood on the bridge of a Serenari research ship as it approached the human colony world of New Terra. The planet looked peaceful from space, with blue oceans and green continents. It was hard to believe such a beautiful world was home to the galaxy's most feared species. "Contact from the surface ambassador," reported Zephyra, the young scientist who would be part of his team. "They're asking us to state our business. Tell them we are here for the cultural exchange they agreed to," Veltar replied. He had sent a message to the human authorities weeks ago, explaining what they wanted to do. To his surprise, the humans had agreed immediately. They seemed excited to have alien visitors who wanted to learn about their culture. "They're giving us landing coordinates," Zephyr announced. "And Ambassador, they say they're honored to have us visit." Veltar nodded. Perhaps the other delegates were wrong about humans being unwelcoming. As their ship descended through New Terra's atmosphere, he saw cities that looked clean and organized. There were parks with trees and lakes. It didn't look like the home of savage warriors. The ship landed at a small spaceport outside the main city. Through the windows, Veltar could see a group of humans waiting for them. They weren't carrying weapons. They looked curious and friendly. "Are you ready for this, Ambassador?" asked Colvin, the elderly Serenary philosopher who would help study human culture. "As ready as anyone can be to meet the unknown," Meltar replied. "Remember, we are here to observe and understand, not to judge." The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. Veltar stepped out first, followed by his team. The human air smelled different from home, but not unpleasant. The gravity was a little stronger than what Serenari were used to, but manageable. A tall human male with short brown hair stepped forward. He wore a blue uniform with small metal decorations on his chest. Behind him stood a human female with long black hair and kind eyes. "Welcome to New Terra," the male human said, extending his hand in what Veltar recognized as a human greeting. Gesture. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, Colony Defense Commander. This is Dr. Lisa Carter, our head of cultural studies." Veltar carefully reached out and shook the human's hand, copying the gesture he had studied. The human's grip was firm but not painful. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Serenari. Thank you for allowing us to visit your world. The honor is ours," Dr. Carter said with a smile. "We've been looking forward to this exchange. It's not often we get to host representatives of the galaxy's most peaceful species." As they walked toward the waiting vehicles, Captain Morrison pointed to different buildings around the spaceport. "We've prepared quarters for you in the cultural district. Dr. Carter has organized a full program, so you can observe daily life." Here, Veltar looked around with interest. The humans seemed relaxed and friendly. Children played in a nearby park while their parents watched. Workers loaded and unloaded cargo ships with efficient teamwork. Everything looked normal and peaceful. Maybe the other delegates were wrong about humans being dangerous. Maybe they were just different, not evil as their vehicle drove toward the city. Veltar allowed himself to feel optimistic. This mission might be easier than he thought. 3 months should be plenty of time to understand human nature and find ways to help them become more peaceful. He had no idea that in 3 months he would return to the Galactic Council as a completely different being. The most peaceful species in the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to be human. The first week on New Terra left the Serenari team feeling confused and disturbed. Everything they saw seemed to prove what the other aliens had said about humans being violent creatures. Zephyra The youngest member of their team stood in the observation room they had been given, watching humans through the large windows. Below in the city square, two groups of humans were engaged in what looked like organized combat. They wore different colored clothing and seemed to be fighting over a round object. "This is horrible," she whispered to Colvin, the elderly philosopher. "They're actually enjoying violence as entertainment." Colvin stroked his chin thoughtfully. Unlike Zephyra, he found human behavior puzzling rather than frightening. "Look closer, young one. Notice how they follow rules. See how they help each other up when someone falls. This is not the chaotic violence we were warned about." Dr. Lisa Carter entered their observation room, carrying a tray with human beverages. She had been assigned to help them understand human culture. "Are you watching the football game?" she asked with a smile. "Football game?" Veltar repeated. "Is that what you call this combat sport?" Lisa laughed, a sound that still startled the Serenari. Human laughter was so different from their soft, musical communications. "It's not combat, Ambassador. It's a game with rules and strategy. The players are trying to move the ball to score points, not hurt each other. But they crash into each other so violently," Zephyra said, her large eyes wide with concern. "True, it can look rough to someone not familiar with it, but watch carefully. When someone gets hurt, both teams stop to help. The players who were just competing against each other will work together to make sure their opponent is okay." The Serenari watched more closely. Lisa was right. When one player stayed down after a collision, players from both teams gathered around him. They called for medical help and waited patiently until the injured player was taken care of. "I don't understand," Veltar admitted. "Why do they choose to risk injury for entertainment?" Lisa sat down with them, thinking about how to explain. "Humans need challenges. We need to test ourselves, to push our limits. Football gives us a way to be competitive and aggressive in a controlled, safe environment. It's better than real fighting." That afternoon, Dr. Carter took them to visit a human school. The Serenari expected to see young humans being trained for war. Instead, they found something completely different. The classroom was bright and colorful. Small humans sat at desks, listening to their teacher, a kind woman named Katie Johnson. She was showing them pictures of different animals and asking them to make the sounds those animals made. "This is how we teach our young?" Veltar asked quietly. "Part of it," Katie replied. "Today we're learning about animals, but we also teach them math, reading, science, and how to get along with others." Zephyra watched the human children with fascination. They seemed so small and fragile, nothing like the warriors she had expected. One little girl was sharing her colored pencils with a boy who had dropped his. Another child was helping a classmate who was struggling with a writing exercise. "They're teaching them to be kind," she whispered in amazement. "Of course," Katie said. "We want our children to grow up to be good people. We teach them to share, to help others, and to solve problems with words instead of fighting." But then came recess time. The Serenari watched in alarm as the children ran outside and immediately began what looked like mock battles. Some played with toy weapons, making shooting sounds, and pretending to fight. Others chased each other around the playground, laughing and screaming. "Now I see the truth," Colvin said sadly. "They trained their young for violence from an early age." Katie overheard him and shook her head. "No, that's not what's happening. Children play fight because it helps them learn about boundaries, teamwork, and problem solving. Watch more carefully." She pointed to a group of boys who had been playing with toy guns. One child started crying because he felt left out of the game. Immediately, the other children stopped playing and gathered around him. They changed their game to include him and made sure he felt welcome. "See?" Katie explained. "They were pretending to fight, But when someone actually got hurt feelings, they stopped the game to take care of him. We teach them that pretend fighting is okay, but real hurting is never okay. The days passed, and the Serenari saw more confusing examples of human behavior. They watched humans cheer loudly at boxing matches, then saw the same people volunteer at hospitals. They observed soldiers training for combat, and watched those same soldiers help elderly humans cross busy streets. Mike Rodriguez, a human engineer who had befriended them, tried to explain it one evening as they shared dinner. "I know we seem contradictory to you," he said, cutting his food with what looked like a small weapon, but was actually just an eating tool. "But think about it this way. We have strong feelings inside us. Instead of pretending those feelings don't exist, we find good ways to use them." "What do you mean?" Valtar asked. "Well, I like competition. I like winning, so I play sports and video games. That way, I can enjoy competing without actually hurting anyone. My friend Tony likes action and excitement, so he became a rescue pilot. He gets to do dangerous, thrilling work, but he uses it to save people instead of hurt them." Zifara was beginning to understand. "So you take what could be destructive impulses and redirect them toward helpful purposes." "Exactly." Mike grinned. "We're not perfect, but we try to channel our aggressive instincts into positive activities." The real test of human nature came during their second week. Zifara was awakened in the middle of the night by loud sirens and flashing lights. She rushed to the window and saw emergency vehicles racing through the streets. Dr. Carter appeared at their quarters within minutes. "There's been a major earthquake about 50 miles from here," she explained quickly. "A whole town is in trouble. We're organizing rescue teams." "Rescue teams?" Colvin asked. "People are trapped under collapsed buildings. We need to get them out before it's too late." The Serenari decided to observe this human emergency response. What they saw over the next 3 days changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. Hundreds of humans dropped everything they were doing and rushed to help. Mike Rodriguez, whose own house had been damaged in the earthquake, spent 72 hours straight digging through rubble to find survivors. He barely stopped to eat or sleep. Tony Clark, the rescue pilot Mike had mentioned, flew mission after mission in dangerous conditions. His helicopter was overloaded with medical supplies and rescue equipment, but he kept going back for more people. Katie Johnson, the gentle school teacher, worked at the emergency shelter, taking care of displaced families. She sang songs to frighten children and helped organize food distribution. But what amazed the Serenari most was how the humans worked together. People who had been competing against each other in sports the day before now formed perfect teams. Rich humans and poor humans worked side by side. Even children helped by carrying water and supplies to the rescue workers. "I don't understand," Zefara said to Dr. Carter as they watched a group of humans form a human chain to pass supplies up a dangerous slope. "Yesterday, I saw these same people arguing about politics and competing in games. Now they work together, like they're all family." Dr. Carter was dirty and tired from her own rescue work, but she smiled. "That's because when it really matters, we are all family. Humans can fight and compete and disagree about things, but when people are in danger, none of that matters anymore. The only thing that matters is helping." Valtar watched a group of human soldiers who had been training for combat just days earlier. Now they were using their strength and skills to lift heavy debris and rescue trapped civilians. The same training that prepared them for war was saving lives. On the third day, they found a family trapped in a collapsed house. The father was badly injured, and the mother was protecting 2 small children in a tiny air pocket. The space was too small for adult humans to enter safely. Without hesitation, a teenage human girl volunteered to crawl into the dangerous space to help get the children out. The adults tried to stop her, saying it was too risky, but she insisted. "Those kids are scared," she said simply. "I'm small enough to reach them, and they need help now." The Serenari watched in amazement as this young human risked her own life to save strangers. She crawled through the unstable rubble, comforted the frightened children, and carefully guided them to safety. When the debris shifted dangerously, she stayed calm and kept the children calm too. When everyone was finally safe, the teenage girl was exhausted and covered in dust, but she was smiling. "Is everyone okay?" she asked, more concerned about the people she had rescued than her own scrapes and bruises. That night, as the Serenari team sat in their quarters discussing what they had witnessed, they realized something important had changed in their understanding. "They are not violent beings," Colvin said slowly. "They are protective beings," Zephyra nodded. "Everything we thought was aggression is actually their way of preparing to protect others." Veltar stared out the window at the humans still working. In the distance, their lights moving through the darkness as they continued rescue operations. "We came here expecting to find monsters," he said quietly. "Instead, we found people who will risk everything to save strangers." The peaceful morning of their 6th week on New Terra was shattered by urgent alarms. Veltar woke to find red lights flashing throughout their guest quarters and the sound of humans. Running in the corridors outside, Dr. Carter burst through their door, her usually calm face filled with worry. "Ambassador, we have an emergency. Space pirates have attacked a civilian transport ship near our system. There are over 300 innocent people on board, including families with children." Zephyra gasped. "Pirates? What will your people do?" "We're going to rescue them," Carter replied without hesitation. The Serenari team quickly made their way to the command center, where they found controlled chaos. Humans were moving quickly but efficiently, talking rapidly into communication. Devices and studying star charts on large screens. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all, giving orders with calm authority. "Tony, get your rescue squadron ready for immediate launch. Rachel, contact the patrol ships and tell them to converge on the transport's last known position. Ben, prep your marine unit for possible boarding action." Veltar approached the captain. "Captain Morrison, surely you will try to negotiate with these pirates first? Perhaps they can be reasoned with." Morrison looked at him with an expression the Serenari had never seen before. His eyes were hard, but not with anger. They burned with something else, something that made Veltar take a step back. "Ambassador," Morrison said quietly, "these aren't reasonable people. The Crimson Fang pirate group has been terrorizing civilian ships for years. They don't negotiate. They take what they want and kill anyone who gets in their way. But violence should always be the last resort," Veltar insisted, falling back on thousands of years of Serenari tradition. "It is the last resort," Morrison replied. "The last resort for those innocent people who are about to die if we don't act." The command center's main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The image showed a scarred reptilian face with cruel yellow eyes. The creature wore pieces of mismatched armor and had weapons strapped all over his body. "This is Captain Scar of the Crimson Fang," the pirate leader announced. "We have your transport ship and its cargo of soft humans. If you want them back alive, you will deliver 1 million credits to these coordinates within 6 hours." Morrison stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison of the new Terra Defense Force. Release the civilians immediately and surrender, and we'll consider showing mercy." Scar laughed, a horrible sound like breaking glass. "Mercy? From humans? You amuse me. But I have a better idea." The pirate turned to someone off-screen. "Bring me one of the young ones." The Serenari watched in horror as a small human child, no more than 6 years old, was dragged into view. The little girl was crying and calling for her parents. "You have 5 hours now," Scar snarled. "For every hour you delay, I will space one of these crying whelps. This one goes out the airlock first." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Veltar felt something new and terrifying rise within him. His peaceful nature, trained over thousands of years, told him to find a diplomatic solution. But as he looked at the fear in the human faces around him, as he thought about that innocent child in the hands of monsters, something else stirred. In his heart, for the first time in his life, Ambassador Veltar of the Serenari felt rage. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking, "what can we do to help?" Morrison looked surprised. "Ambassador, this could get very dangerous." "Maybe you should. Stay here where it's safe." "No," Veltar said firmly. "Those people need help. We want to help them." Tony Clark, the rescue pilot they had met during the earthquake, was checking his flight suit. "Ambassador, with respect, this isn't like the disaster relief. We're going into combat against people who want to kill us." "Then teach us how to help," Safara said, stepping forward. "We cannot stand by while innocents suffer." Colvin nodded agreement. The Serenari have always sought to prevent suffering. If we must learn new ways to do that, then we will learn. The next few hours became a crash course in human military thinking. The Serenari learned about tactics, strategy, and the careful planning that went into a rescue mission. Rachel Stone, the communications officer, explained how they would coordinate the attack. "We'll jam their communications first, so they can't call for help. Then Tony's fighters will disable their engines, while Ben's Marines board the ship." "What about the hostages?" Veltar asked. "That's the tricky part," Ben Wright, the Marine commander, admitted. "We have to move fast and hit hard. The longer this takes, the more time they have to hurt innocent people." Veltar studied the battle. Plans with growing understanding. Every human strategy was designed to minimize harm to civilians. They were willing to take enormous risks to save people they had never met. "Why?" he asked Morrison quietly. "Why do you risk your lives for strangers?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Because if we don't, who will? Those people trusted us to protect them when they entered our space. We gave them our word that they would be safe here. But the danger to your own people is so great." "Yes, it is. But the danger to those families is greater. Sometimes, Ambassador, the only way to protect innocent lives is to be more dangerous than those who would harm them." The Serenari watched the rescue fleet launch from New Terra. 3 fast attack ships, 2 heavy cruisers, and a dozen fighter craft. As they followed the battle through the command center's communications, they began to understand something fundamental about human nature. The humans weren't attacking because they enjoyed violence. They were attacking because they loved peace so much that they were willing to fight for it. Tony Clark's voice crackled over the radio. "Transport ship in sight. I count at least 6 pirate vessels, heavily armed. They're not going to give up easily." "Understood," Morrison replied. "Remember, people, we're not here to destroy pirates. We're here to save lives. Disable their ships when possible, but don't hesitate to use lethal force if they threaten the hostages." The battle was swift and fierce. The Serenari listened as the humans coordinated their attack with precision that amazed them. Each pilot and soldier knew exactly what to do and when to do it. "This is Tony. I'm taking heavy fire, but I've disabled their main engine." "Rachel, can you get through their communications jam?" "Working on it," Rachel replied, her fingers flying over her control panel. "Ben, you're clear for boarding. Watch out for booby traps." "Copy that. Marines, remember, we're going in hot. These pirates have killed civilians before, and they'll do it again if we give them the chance." As the battle raged, Veltar found himself caught up in the human emotion of it all. When Tony's fighter was hit and started spinning out of control, The Serenare felt genuine fear for the brave pilot. When Ben's Marines successfully boarded the transport ship, he felt a surge of hope. "You've got the bridge," Ben reported. "Scar is down, but he's still alive. The other pirates are surrendering." "What about the hostages?" Morrison asked urgently. "All alive, sir. The bastards roughed them up pretty badly, but everyone's breathing. That little girl is asking for her parents." A cheer went up in the command center, and the Serenare found themselves cheering too. They had watched humans risk everything to save people they didn't know, and it had worked. But then Tony's voice came over the radio, strained with pain. "Control, this is Tony. My fighter's badly damaged, and I'm losing life support. I don't think I'm going to make it back." The celebration stopped immediately. Morrison grabbed the radio. "Tony, we're sending a rescue ship." "Hold on." "Negative, Captain. I'm too far out, and there are still pirates in the area. Don't risk anyone else for me." Veltar watched the humans around him, seeing the pain in their faces. They had won the battle and saved the hostages, but they might lose one of their own heroes. "Like hell," Rachel said, her voice fierce. "Tony, you saved my life during the earthquake. Now it's my turn." Before anyone could stop her, she was running toward the hangar where the emergency rescue ships were kept. "Rachel, stand down." Morrison ordered. "Sorry, Captain, but I can't hear you over the engine noise," she replied. Already starting up a rescue craft, other humans began volunteering to join the rescue mission. Soon, half the command center crew was ready to risk their lives. To save one injured pilot, this was the moment when Veltar truly understood what humans meant by righteous fury. It wasn't blind anger or mindless violence. It was love transformed into protective action. It was the willingness to risk everything for those who mattered. The rescue was successful. Rachel brought Tony back safely, though he would need weeks of medical treatment. The hostages were returned to their families. The pirates were captured and would face justice, but the Serenare were forever changed by what they had witnessed. That night, as they sat in their quarters discussing the day's events, Veltar realized something profound had happened to him. When he had seen that innocent child threatened by the pirate leader, he had felt something he had never experienced before. He had wanted to hurt someone, not out of cruelty or enjoyment, but out of a burning need to protect the helpless. The feeling had been so strong it frightened him. "Is this what humans call anger?" Zephyra asked quietly. Colvin nodded slowly. "But not the kind of anger we were warned about. This is different. This is anger at injustice. Anger that someone would hurt the innocent." "I felt it too, V." 2 weeks before their mission was set to end, the Serenare no longer looked like the same beings who had arrived on New Terra. They stood straighter, moved with more purpose, and their large, gentle eyes now held a new kind of awareness. Veltar found himself studying human military tactics in his free time. Sifara had learned to appreciate the strategic thinking behind human competitive sports. Colvin spent hours discussing philosophy with Chris Murphy, a human professor who taught the ethics of warfare. "The question isn't whether violence is always wrong," Professor Murphy explained during one of their evening discussions. "The question is whether allowing evil to flourish unchallenged is more wrong than using force to stop it." The Serenare team sat in Murphy's comfortable office, surrounded by books about human history and philosophy. Outside, they could hear children playing in the campus courtyard, their laughter mixing with the sound of evening wind through the trees. "But where do you draw the line?" Colvin asked. "How do you know when peaceful methods have failed and force becomes necessary?" Murphy poured tea for his guests, considering the question carefully. "That's the hardest part of being human. We have to make those decisions knowing we might be wrong. But we've learned that waiting too long to act can be just as immoral as acting too quickly." Veltar thought about the pirate attack 2 weeks earlier. You mean like when Captain Scar threatened that child? There was no negotiating with someone like that. Exactly, Murphy nodded. Some evil cannot be reasoned with, only stopped. The key is making sure we never become the evil we're fighting against. Dana Lewis, a human military strategist, had been teaching the Serenari about defensive planning. She spread out maps and charts on a large table, showing them how humans thought about protecting their worlds. The goal isn't to start fights, she explained. The goal is to be so prepared that potential enemies decide fighting us isn't worth the cost. Zephyra studied the defensive positions marked on the maps. You plan for attacks that may never come? We hope they never come, Dana replied. But hope isn't enough to protect innocent people. We have to be ready. This is what humans call peace through strength, added Paul Stevens, a human diplomat who had become close friends with Veltar. We prepare for the worst while working for the best. Paul had taught the Serenari about the careful balance between diplomacy and military readiness. I've spent my whole career trying to solve problems with words instead of weapons, he told them. But I've learned that diplomacy only works when both sides want peace. When one side wants to hurt people, you need something stronger than words to stop them. The transformation of the Serenari became clear when a new crisis arose. A group of Zirathi slavers, the same species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, arrived at the edge of New Terra's system. Their message was simple and brutal. Humans of New Terra, the Zirathi commander announced over the communication channels, you will provide us with 1,000 of your people as slaves, or we will take them by force. You have 12 hours to comply. The message included images of other worlds the Zirathi had attacked. Burned cities, empty settlements, and the heartbreaking sight of families being torn apart as people were loaded onto slave ships. Captain Morrison called an emergency meeting in the command center. The human leadership gathered quickly, their faces grim but determined. The Serenari team was invited to observe, as they had been for all major decisions during their stay. Options? Morrison asked his staff. We could evacuate the colony, suggested one officer. Get everyone off-world before they arrive. Where would 1 million people go? Morrison replied. And what about the next colony they visit? Do we just keep running? We could ask for help from the Galactic Council, another officer offered. Dana Lewis shook her head. The Council will spend months debating what to do. By then, half the sector will be enslaved. We could try to negotiate, said a young diplomat. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at Paul Stevens, the most experienced negotiator present. Paul sighed heavily. I've studied the Zirathi for 20 years. They don't negotiate. They take what they want and destroy what they can't use. Talking to them would just give them time to position for attack. Veltar found himself standing before he realized he had moved. All eyes in the room turned to him. Ambassador? Morrison asked. Did you want to say something? For a moment, Veltar hesitated. 3 months ago, he would have automatically suggested peaceful negotiation. The old Veltar would have insisted there had to be a diplomatic solution. But the Veltar who had watched humans risk their lives for strangers, who had felt righteous anger at the sight of innocent children threatened, who had learned that sometimes love required the willingness to fight, was a different being. Captain Morrison, he said, his voice steady and strong. The Serenari delegation offers whatever assistance we can provide in defending this world. The room erupted in surprised voices. Several humans started to object, saying it was too dangerous for civilians. But Morrison held up his hand for silence. Ambassador, are you sure about this? Your people came here to study us, not to fight alongside us. Veltar looked around the room at the humans who had become his friends over the past months. Tony Clark, still recovering from his injuries, but already volunteering for the defense fleet. Rachel Stone, determined to protect the world that had become her home. Ben Wright and his Marines, ready to stand between slavers and innocent families. "Captain," Veltar said quietly, "my people came here to learn about humans. We have learned that humans fight not because they enjoy violence, but because they love peace enough to defend it. We have learned that sometimes the most compassionate action is the most decisive one." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "The Zirathi slavers are not just threatening New Terra. They are threatening the principle that innocent people should be free from fear. As long as they are allowed to continue their evil, no one in the galaxy is truly safe." Zephyra stepped forward to stand beside her ambassador. "The humans have taught us that watching evil happen and doing nothing makes you part of the evil. We will not be part of this evil." Colvin joined them. "For too long, the galaxy has accepted that some species will always be victims and others will always be predators. Perhaps it is time that changed." Morrison looked at the three Serenari with new respect. "What exactly are you offering, Ambassador?" "Our ships have advanced sensor technology. We can help you track the Zirathi fleet and predict their movements. Our understanding of galactic politics can help you coordinate with other systems. And if it comes to direct conflict—" Veltar paused, still amazed at what he was about to say. "We will stand with you." The next 10 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. The Serenari found themselves fully integrated into the human defense planning. Their peaceful nature, combined with their new understanding of strategic thinking, provided insights that surprised even the human military leaders. "The Zirathi expect resistance," Veltar explained, studying the enemy fleet movements. "But they expect desperate, disorganized resistance. They have never faced an enemy that was both morally motivated and tactically prepared." Sephara worked with the communication teams, using Serenari technology to intercept Zirathi battle plans. "They're planning to split their fleet," she reported. "Half will attack the orbital stations, while the other half lands ground forces." "Classic slaver tactics," Donna Lewis confirmed. "They want to damage our defenses without destroying the merchandise they're trying to capture. Then we use their own strategy against them," Colvin suggested. "We let them think they're succeeding while we prepare our real response." The humans stared at the elderly Serenari philosopher in amazement. This was the same being who 3 months ago had believed that all conflicts could be resolved through patient discussion. When the Zirathi fleet arrived, they found New Terra apparently unprepared for their attack. The colony's defenses seemed minimal, and there was no sign of the military buildup that usually preceded human resistance. The Zirathi commander was pleased. "These humans are weaker than expected," he told his officers. "We will take their world with minimal losses." But as the Zirathi ships moved into attack position, they discovered their mistake. The humans hadn't been unprepared. They had been waiting. The orbital defense platforms that seemed lightly armed revealed hidden weapon arrays. The civilian ships fleeing the system suddenly changed course and began coordinated attacks. The human fighters that appeared to be in panicked retreat were actually leading the Zirathi into carefully planned ambush positions. "This is Ambassador Veltar of the Serenari, speaking to the Zirathi fleet," came a transmission that shocked the slavers more than any human weapon could have. The most peaceful species in the galaxy was speaking with the voice of absolute authority. "You came here expecting to find victims," Veltar continued. "You expected to face people who would beg for mercy or try to negotiate for terms. You were wrong." The Zirathi commander was stunned. "Serenari? What are you doing with these humans?" "We are learning what it means to protect innocence," Veltar replied. "You have taught us that some evils cannot be reasoned with, only stopped. You have shown us that peace without the strength to defend it is merely surrender. We are no longer the Serenari you once knew." The bat. 6 months after the Serenari delegation returned from their mission to study humans, the galaxy buzzed with rumors and reports that seemed impossible to believe. The most peaceful species in known space was building warships. High Counselor Vexaean called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices filled with confusion and concern. "This makes no sense," declared the Korthak representative, waving his 6 arms in agitation. "The Serenari have never built so much as a police patrol ship. Now they're constructing battle cruisers?" The snake-like Visari delegate hissed his agreement. Something has gone terribly wrong. The humans must have corrupted them somehow. Or worse, added the crystal being from Zirion, they've been infected with human aggression. We may have created a new threat even more dangerous than the humans themselves. Supreme Counselor Nethara of the Serenari rose to address the assembly. She was an ancient being, even by Serenari standards, and had led her people for over 2 centuries. But there was something different about her now. Her movements were more purposeful, her bearing more commanding. "Honored colleagues," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber with new authority, "I understand your concerns about the changes in Serenari society. You have a right to explanations." "Explanations?" The Korthic delegate's voice rose to a shout. "Your people have violated every principle they've claimed to believe in for 3,000 years. You've betrayed everything the Serenari represent." Neth Ara, large eyes, once gentle and peaceful, now held something that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "We have not betrayed our principles. We have finally learned how to truly live them." High Counselor Vexaean leaned forward. "Supreme Counselor, please help us understand. What exactly did your delegation learn from the humans?" Before Nethara could answer, urgent alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. A communications officer rushed to Vexaean's side, whispering frantically in his ear. Vexaean's ancient face went pale. "I regret to inform the Assembly that we have just received a distress call from the Peaceful Valley colony in the Outer Rim. They are under attack by a Zirithi slaver fleet." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Peaceful Valley was home to over 1 million colonists, including many refugees who had escaped from previous Zirithi raids. If it fell, those people would face a fate worse than death. "How long until a council rescue fleet can reach them?" asked the Visari delegate. "At least 4 days," Vexaean replied grimly. "I'm afraid that by the time we could organize a response, the colony will be empty and the people will be in slave pens," Nethara finished quietly. "Just like the last 6 colonies, the Zirithi have attacked while the council debated proper procedures." She stood, her blue skin seeming to glow with inner light. "Honored colleagues, this is exactly why the Serenari have changed. For too long, we have sat in comfortable chambers talking about peace while evil beings destroy innocent lives." The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Nethara continued speaking, her voice cutting through the noise. "The humans taught us that true peace is not the absence of conflict. True peace is the presence of justice. And justice sometimes requires those with the power to act to actually use that power." "What are you saying?" demanded the Korthak delegate. "I am saying that the new Serenari Defense Force can reach Peaceful Valley in 18 hours. Nethara replied calmly. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Serenari had never had a military force of any kind in their entire recorded history. "Impossible," breathed the crystal being. "The Serenari don't have warships." "We do now," came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. The assembled delegates turned to see a figure that shocked them even more than Nethara's words. Ambassador Veltar strode into the chamber, but he was no longer the gentle, soft-spoken diplomat they remembered. He wore a uniform of deep blue and silver, with insignia that marked him as a military commander. "I am Protector Veltar of the Serenari Defense Force," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of absolute conviction. And I bring greetings from Admiral Zephyra and General Colvin. The Visari delegate nearly fell from his hovering platform. Admiral? General? But you were scientists and philosophers. We were naive idealists, Veltar corrected. The humans taught us the difference between wisdom and wishful thinking. High Counselor Thixan found his voice. Protector Veltar, surely you're not suggesting that the Serenari will unilaterally attack the Zerathi fleet? I'm not suggesting it, Veltar replied. I'm announcing it. The SDF fleet is already en route to Peaceful Valley. We will arrive in 17 hours and 43 minutes. The chamber exploded in shouts and arguments. Some delegates demanded that the Serenari be expelled from the council immediately. Others warned of galactic war. A few asked what had happened to the peaceful beings they had known for millennia. Veltar waited for the noise to die down, then spoke with quiet intensity that commanded attention. 6 months ago, I stood before you as a representative of a species that believed violence was always wrong. We thought that peaceful intentions and patient discussion could solve any problem. We were fools. He moved to the center of the chamber, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. The humans showed us the truth. Evil exists. Some beings choose to hurt others for profit, pleasure, or power. When those beings encounter pure pacifism, they see weakness to be exploited, not virtue to be respected. But violence breeds more violence, protested the Korthik delegate. No, Veltar replied firmly. Evil unopposed breeds more evil. Violence, in defense of innocence, breeds justice. Supreme Counselor Nethara stepped forward to join Veltar. The humans taught us that the strongest warriors are those who fight not for conquest, but for protection. They showed us that righteous fury in defense of the helpless is not aggression. It is love made manifest. And what gives you the right to decide who lives and who dies? Demanded the crystal being. The same thing that gave the Zerathi the right to attack innocent colonists, Veltar answered. The power to do so. The difference is that we choose to use our power to defend life, while they use theirs to destroy it. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by incoming reports from the Peaceful Valley system. The Serenari defense force had arrived exactly when Veltar had promised. What followed was broadcast live to the Galactic Council and became legendary throughout known space. The Zerathi slaver fleet, confident in their superiority over defenseless colonists, suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The Serenari ships were smaller than Zerathi battlecruisers, but they moved with perfect coordination and struck with surgical precision. This is Protector Veltar of the Serenari Defense Force, came the transmission that would be remembered for generations. Zerathi vessels, you have chosen to prey upon the innocent. You have shown that you cannot be reasoned with, only stopped. This is your only warning. Release your captives and surrender immediately. The Zerathi commander's response was predictable. Serenari, you pathetic peace lovers have no stomach for real war. We will crush you and take your blue hides as trophies. Then, you have made your choice, Veltar replied with deadly calm. The battle was not a fight. It was a demonstration. The Serenari had taken human tactical knowledge and combined it with their natural empathic abilities and perfect coordination. They could predict Zerathi movements before the slavers themselves knew what they were going to do. But it was more than tactical superiority that made the Serenari unstoppable. It was their absolute moral certainty. They fought with the focused intensity of beings who knew beyond any doubt that their cause was just. When Zerathi ships tried to use hostages as shields, Serenari boarding parties appeared as if from nowhere, moving through the enemy vessels like blue shadows of vengeance. When slavers threatened to execute captives, they found themselves facing warriors who had learned from humans that sometimes mercy required merciless action, The Zirathi fleet was systematically dismantled. Ships that surrendered were spared. Ships that continued to threaten innocents were destroyed without hesitation. Within 6 hours, the most feared slaver fleet in the galaxy had been reduced to scattered debris and fleeing survivors. Let this be a message to all who would prey upon the defenseless. Veltar's voice carried across subspace to every corner of the galaxy. The age of unopposed evil is over. The Serenari will no longer stand by while innocents suffer. We have learned from our human friends that peace without strength is merely an invitation for wolves to devour sheep. We are no longer the pacifists you once knew. We are protectors. We are guardians. We are the sword and shield of justice, and we will find you wherever you hide. Back in the council chamber, the delegates sat in stunned silence as the reports came in. The Zirathi fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for decades had been crushed in a single engagement. More than 1 million colonists had been saved, and it had been done by the species everyone thought of as harmless. Peace-Lovers.High Counselor Thexan finally found his voice. Protector Veltar, what you've done today, ... The implications are exactly what we intended, Veltar replied. From the bridge of his command ship, for too long, evil has prospered because good beings